What's up, everybody? Nate here. Alright, so we have a lot to talk about today. The Federal Reserve just made a huge announcement on the possibility of a recession in 2022, and they hinted at what their next rate hikes are going to be for May of this year. In addition, Elon Musk also spoke out about inflation and what the Federal Reserve is currently doing, and he said that inflation is most likely going to get worse and that he believes that our current inflation numbers are completely wrong. In fact, inflation is way higher than what we're measuring it at right now. So things right now are crazy, especially since San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly just said that a mild recession in the United States is completely possible. And today we're gonna be breaking all of this down and more. But before I get into all of that, do me a quick favor and hit smash or destroy that thumbs up button below and ring that notification bell too. Both of those two things are completely free and they help to show me that you like this video and that you want to see even more just like it. Alright, so I want to start with the Federal Reserve. Now, Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, and a bunch of Fed presidents made a huge announcement today. San Francisco President Mary Daly said that the Federal Reserve is taking all actions that it can to fight inflation and that she believes a smooth landing for our economy is on the horizon. She said that, quote, "Accounting for the risks of being too fast or too slow, I see an expeditious march to neutral by the end of this year as a prudent path." She also cited some research from the former Federal Reserve Vice Chairman, Alan Blinder. He said that in his research, 11 of the last rate hikes were followed by a mild recession or none at all, basically a smooth landing. She also added, quote, "Now since I'm in Las Vegas, I will offer that I think those are pretty good odds." Pretty good odds? So basically what she's saying here is that the Federal Reserve's rate hikes are not going to cause a full-blown recession like we saw in 2008 and in previous recessions. She believes that our economy is going to have a smooth landing. Now, what exactly would that look like? This would mean that inflation slowly starts to decrease down to the Federal Reserve's target level of around 1 to 3%. It also means that consumer spending and consumer sentiment is going to continue to rise or remain neutral throughout the country. And with both of those things happening, wages will most likely continue, but they're not going to go up too crazy where businesses take on too many extra costs. And all of that means that companies throughout the United States are going to have a good amount of profit so they can continue to grow. We're not going to see heavy unemployment like we have in previous years. And other Federal Reserve presidents, like the Federal Reserve President of St. Louis and Chicago, believe the exact same thing. Which brings me to Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell's statements today. Every single time Powell steps on the stand, people get nervous, and the reason being is because the Federal Reserve basically controls supply and demand of our money in the United States, and that affects everything. Basically, Powell said that in May, the Federal Reserve could easily raise its benchmark interest rates by 50 basis points. Now, in March, they raised them by 25 basis points. They thought this was extremely helpful and good for our economy at the time, but I think what they're realizing is they are not doing enough. Powell said that it is absolutely essential to restore price stability, meaning inflation needs to come back down and prices need to stop going way up in the United States. One of the ways that the Federal Reserve can do that is to eliminate demand throughout our country, and they have direct control over that with interest rates. When the pandemic started all the way back in March of 2020, the Fed lowered its benchmark interest rates to 0%. They wanted to spike demand because people weren't spending enough money, or the thought was people weren't going to spend enough money. Consumer spending accounts for around 70% of our economic activity, so if that goes away, our country is gonna have a problem. This meant that there was so much money flowing throughout our economy. People could easily go out and get a mortgage or other types of loans because it was easy to spend money. Now the Federal Reserve wants to restrict that economic activity. They don't want as much money circulating around because as people spend more, inflation goes up. Because people are buying so much more, businesses have to produce more and they have to pay their workers more in order to make more things. All of that comes at a cost, and eventually they just trickle all of those extra costs down to the consumer. That's why we've started to see consumer prices skyrocket in the United States. Like on the last CPI report that was posted in March of 2022, we saw inflation hit an over 40-year high high of around 8.5%. The Fed has talked about getting even more aggressive with inflation if they continue to see inflation rise beyond expectations, and it's done that every single month since it's pretty much started. So now they're talking about a 50 basis point hike in May. They want to start raising rates even faster to restrict demand even quicker. On this issue, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said, quote, "Our goal is to use our tools to get demand and supply back in sync so that inflation moves down and does so without a slowdown that amounts to a recession. I don't think you'll hear anyone at the Fed say that that's going to be straightforward or easy. It's going to be very challenging. We're going to do our very best to accomplish that." In addition, he added, quote, "It may be that the actual inflation peak was in March, but we don't know that, so we're not going to count on it. We're really going to be raising rates and getting expeditiously to levels that are more neutral and then that are actually tight, if that turns out to be appropriate once we get there." Powell also says that our labor market is historically tight right now and that the United States economy is very strong. The reason he believes that is because even though inflation has hit new record highs recently, consumer spending has also gone up. We started to see debt rise even more, and people are still spending money. We know that because businesses are putting out record earnings reports. Most of them are crashing their earnings because people are still spending. It's not just because inflation is high. People are still spending a lot of money. Now, how exactly does Elon Musk play a role in all of this? Well, the Federal Reserve is a massive entity in the United States, and they control our monetary policy based on the Consumer Price Index and the Producer Price Index. These two things show how the average price of our goods and services are moving from month to month. If they're going up, then the CPI report is going to show that inflation is also rising. If they go down, then inflation and the average price of things is also going down. Elon Musk, though, is saying that our inflation numbers are not correct. Inflation is actually worse than what is being reported. And he believes that inflation is going to continue throughout the rest of 2022 and is going to affect every aspect of our economy. Now, Elon Musk has a unique perspective on this whole issue because for him, he is the CEO of Tesla, and Tesla is a business that takes on certain costs. He said that current inflation numbers do not paint the entire picture, and our federal regulators need to do a lot more in order to bring it down. For instance, he said that for certain parts of his Tesla vehicles, they are costing 20 to 30% more right now. He said that for his company Tesla, he's trying to do everything he can to lower costs. That way he doesn't have to raise prices too much. However, Elon Musk did announce that prices for Tesla vehicles are going to go up in 2022 and 2023. This is all in a response to inflation, and he said that governments around the world continue to print a crazy amount of money. His company and businesses throughout the world have no control over that. Now, this is a pretty big claim from Elon Musk because if actual inflation numbers are way higher than what is being reported, that means Americans are in for a pretty rude awakening. Right now, finances are tough for a lot of Americans because it's really hard to budget when you don't know what the price of something is going to be a month from now. And for many Americans, wages are not going up nearly fast enough in order to meet inflation. So there is a big gap between the price of things and your actual paycheck. The big fear on a recession for the Federal Reserve, Elon Musk, and experts and investors all throughout the world is that consumers are going to stop spending. If things become way too expensive, then they're going to have to pull back. Sure, consumers are going to spend on things that they need, and they're going to buy things that they want. That's absolutely going to continue. But it's all of the additional spending that keeps our economy going. So basically, Americans are going to cut back. They're not going to buy anything extra. They're only going to buy the things that they need. And because prices are going up, that might be fewer things. Inflation means that the value of your money is going down, and so is the buying power. You need a lot more money in order to buy all of the same things. If you're not getting all of that extra money, though, then you're not able to buy all of the same things. That leads to businesses having lower profits, and it also leads to unemployment because businesses can't afford to keep all of those people. This also comes at a time when we have big supply chain issues from the pandemic. pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. Businesses are in a mad dash to hire as many people as they can right now so that they can start producing more in order to meet demand, but they can't do that if inflation goes up and people stop spending money. All of that could lead us into a recession because now Americans can't spend any money, but in addition, the Federal Reserve could raise interest rates too quickly, so then it's even harder for Americans to buy anything and to take on debt. Overall, you could see a lot more Americans start to save money, which is a big problem considering we need a lot of that spending. And of course, investors on Wall Street don't like the idea of a recession because that means businesses are going to lose profits and the value of those companies is going to go down. Nobody wants to have money poured into a company that is going to start losing money. So investors get scared and they start pulling their money out. That is exactly why the stock market dipped a little bit after the Fed's announcement, because they don't want inflation to get worse, which could cause a recession. Now, it's worth noting here what Mary Daly said about a really mild recession. Even if the United States was to go into a recession, it's not going to be like 2008 or recessions of the past. If the United States went into a recession at all, it would not be a very deep one. So we could see another very short recession like we did in 2020. And it might be something the United States needs because everything in our economy has been setting new record highs over the last 2 years or so. The asset market, like stocks, bonds, commodities, and real estate, all have gone straight through the roof. In addition, consumer prices are also at record highs. All of that needs to come back down, and it needs to come back down sooner rather than later. Coming back down from those record highs is technically going to mean a recession, but it's not going to be your typical recession. It's more going to be a return to normalcy. As for Elon Musk's comments on inflation, I'm not sure what the true inflation numbers are. Obviously, things in particular industries are going to cost a lot more than in other ones, but the CPI is just measuring the outright average of everything in our economy. Inflation for some people is going to be a lot worse for inflation than others because some people got bigger raises. Some people have already started investing. Others didn't get that big raise and have no investments to fall back on. So yeah, inflation is a widespread issue that affects everybody differently. I wouldn't say that inflation numbers are wrong right now, I'd just say that they're misinterpreted because everything has a different price point and everything is affected differently by supply and demand. However, he might be right about it continuing throughout 2022 and beyond though, because if the Federal Reserve doesn't get aggressive enough with inflation, then you're going to continue to see it rise. That is the soft landing that the San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly is talking about here. Jerome Powell and Mary Daly believe that the economy is in a really good place right now and they're able to raise rates even faster because of that. So it wouldn't shock me if we saw a 50 basis point hike in May of this year. And some Fed presidents believe that's not aggressive enough, with the St. Louis Fed president saying that we need a 75 basis point hike and the Chicago Fed president supporting a 50 basis point hike. With that being said though, I think the Fed is way behind on inflation. They probably already should have done a lot of what they're doing now 6 months ago. But they wanted to give the US economy and the stock market adequate time to prepare themselves. They didn't want to just start raising rates because that could cause an outright panic. And it could send the wrong message because they have always been believers that inflation is only transitory and that eventually it's going to start slowing down and going away. And that there is nothing for the average consumer to worry about. If they go too quickly, then people might start to get the wrong idea. So yeah, inflation is still probably going to be here throughout 2022 and into 2023 because I don't think the Federal Reserve is going to get nearly aggressive enough in order to lower it. And just to be clear, inflation is never going to go away. The Fed is always going to print money and the federal government is always going to need more money. The Fed just wants to bring it down to that target level of 1 to 3%. So it's at 8.5% right now. So they've got around 6% to go. That means that consumers can expect prices to continue to go up, albeit a lot slower in 2023 and beyond. Businesses like Tesla can also expect their prices to go up too, which means wages are going to increase in the United States so that everybody makes a lot more money. And hopefully for Elon Musk's sake and our own, we don't have to worry about inflation anymore very, very soon. But now I want to hear from you. on this issue. What do you think about the Federal Reserve's comments about a possible mild recession and their new interest rate hikes for May 2022? And of course, Elon Musk's comments on inflation and how the numbers are not at all accurate. Do you think that Elon Musk is right, that inflation numbers are not correct at all, and that it will most likely continue in 2022 because the Federal Reserve is not going to do enough to lower it? Or do you think that inflation as it stands is completely accurate and the numbers and measurements that we have are the best ones at the moment? Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all of the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting out updates 7 days a week over here on this channel, and I've actually got another one ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.